WERS. My name's Bentley. We're here with Henry Rollins. How are you doing today?
I'm very good, thank you.
We're just chatting a little bit about microphones, but you are here for reasons besides just talking about microphones. So welcome back to Boston.
Thank you very much.
And welcome to WERS. I think it's your first time here, right?
That I'm not too sure. It doesn't seem familiar, but I've been to a lot of stations.
Right. Well, hopefully you're finding it well so far.
Good. Yeah.
And so happy to have you here, backing up such a vibrant music scene, but also a great art scene. And you're actually here on the Capitalism spoken word tour right now. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
I've been on tour since January of this year, and there were about 169 shows into the year in about 19 or 20 countries. But this particular leg of the tour, it's almost done. I've been in every capital city of every state, and the tour will end on the eve of the election in Washington, D.C.
How did the concept for this tour come about?
I wish it was mine, but I have no imagination whatsoever. It was my agent. I was going to be on tour in America anyway. I'd probably be here tonight no matter what. But my agent last year said, look, here's an interesting way to go through America in the autumn and taking into account the election. And we said, we'll call it Capitalism, and we'll try and get you to every capital city. I said, wow. And it'd be crazy to try and do it. And it was not easy, but John pulled it off, so.
In addition to the tour, you're also shooting a documentary along the way. How did the idea for this documentary project come about?
Take Part Media, Participant Media, they came to us and they said, it's an election year, you'll be in these capital cities, someone should cover it. What's been making it more relevant is every day for Take Part TV, which I guess is some arm of Participant Media. We go out with a camera crew every day, and I interview myself and walk around and talk about stuff, or we interview somebody. We met a World War II veteran, a man named Bill, kind of at the end of his life in the veterans, we were at VFW Hall. And besides he being in the Battle of the Bulge, which a lot of American troop casualties in that, I asked him, I said, if you would you talk about Iraq? And if that was, if you thought that was a good endeavor. And he said no. And it was interesting hearing a guy who's probably to the right of most topics say that as a soldier. And when a soldier weighs in on the topic of war, everyone else, guys like me who've never served, should probably just shut up and listen, because they've put skin in the game and we are merely pundits on the side.
And talking to people like this, they're not necessarily the kind of people that you'd meet at your shows, right?
No, and that's what makes it interesting. A guy like that would never come to my show. Every once in a while, we'll interview someone who would be so inclined, but most of the time, like a politician. Are you kidding? They can't be seen at my show. So it's good to get your head out of the bubble of touring and interact with some real people.
Is it refreshing in a way to do that?
Oh, yes. No, it's a great way to keep your perspective. Another thing that's been relevant is after shows, I'm out by my tour bus. I always do this forever. And I talk to anyone who's around. And sometimes people tell me their stories. Guy will say, hey, here's what just happened to me. My brother, was killed in Afghanistan this year. Or I'm gay and I came out to my parents and it was really tough, but I thought of you before I did it to get myself pumped up. I put on one of your records and I had the courage to do it, and it didn't go very well, but it's cool. Like, I'm still here and I'm all right. And it's impossible for me to retain any real cynicism when you hear a story like that, when you hear what people go through, what some people go through medically, like physically, how they're challenged. Like a body ailment, like some kind of body arthritis where everything hurts for like weeks at a time and they're on their back. Or people who come up and say, I have MS and everything's tough, but I always come to see you. And it's like people are in an arm wrestling match with their own bodies every day. And they are kind enough to come to your show and say something nice to you. It's very humbling. And it has made me draw the conclusion that all of these people are better than me. And I'm lucky that they choose to come to my show. And so it's an odd relationship where they go, thanks for showing up. I'm like, actually, I'm really the beneficiary of you showing up.
And when you're getting ready for a spoken word show, how does that differ if you do have a different process from a music show?
It's a lot more involved because with a band show, it's like, 20 songs, whatever it is. So it's like 20 poems that you are covered by snare drum, loud guitar. So if you make a mistake, no one knows. If I'm on my own and I'm the only signal coming through the PA, it's all on me. And so if you're going to talk for 2 hours at a high rate of speed, a lot of words are going to fly out of you, which gives you myriad chances to get it wrong. And so a lot of focusing and funneling goes into kind of hitting laser beam intensity when you walk out on stage at 7:30. And that's what it's all about. And to maintain that line of communication till you say goodnight is like tightrope walking while you juggle. Thankfully, I do it once a night. Twice would be pretty intense.
How did you discover that you were able to do that?
Growing up where I come from in Washington, D.C., storytelling, being able to imitate your friends and all of that, as it is in many neighborhoods, is held at a premium. If you can crack your buddies up, you're the guy. And I come from a neighborhood full of some pretty wise guys and gals. And so in Washington, D.C., in our little punk rock scene, you had to be able to imitate every record and everybody. Because quite often in my line of work with the kind of equipment I was used to, things would break down between songs. So while they're gluing together the guitar, I would just fill in the gaps. And so I got really good at, I got about 4 minutes as I see the soldering iron getting plugged in. I can fill this out. And so when I started just doing it, as a show, it was not that much of a stretch.
So there weren't really any growing pains when you made that transition to say, this is a spoken word show?
No, there were no growing pains. It's just that you saw that there was a lot of ways to get better at it. And so there's just a lot of room for growth. Where if you listen to shows I was doing in like 1983 and what I'll do tonight, the differences will probably be very substantial. And hopefully I'm better now.
Are you satisfied with where you're at now, or do you still feel like there's that much room to grow?
Oh, no. Never be satisfied. Satisfaction should be a very, very short part of your life. I allow myself about 120 to 180 seconds of satisfaction post-show in that I brought the stone to the top of the mountain, didn't roll back on me. I pulled it off. No bottles or daggers were thrown. No subpoenas were issued. And then I catch my breath, and there's the Damoclean sword over my head of tomorrow night's show. And so satisfaction, I never make myself a friend of. It's just interesting, and then you got to shove it off and stay hungry.
And this entire tour is ending in Washington, D.C. on the eve of the election.
Yes.
It's a pretty poetic way to end it.
It is, and that's what we did it specifically. This was the D.C. show was the first show we booked because that's the one they couldn't miss. And so we'll be at the 9:30 Club, and that'll be shown live on television, live on Take Part TV, 8 o'clock East Coast time for free. For like 3 days, you'll be able to watch it for free.
And since you are here, and this is a college radio station, I'm a college student, and we're talking slightly about politics right now. How important do you think it is for the younger generation just about to enter the workforce to be involved in this election?
It is of the utmost importance. Who you vote for is really not my concern, and that it's really your business. That you vote concerns me. Thomas Jefferson is begging you to vote. In basically, if you want to see democracy really be as transparent as possible in this country, besides all the lobbyists and the super PACs and Citizens United, you really need to vote if you are eligible. It very well could be that you don't have an opinion yet. Fair enough. I hope you get one. The First Amendment kind of wants you to have one, I think. If you have decided that the two major parties are not to your liking, I understand and sympathize. I hope you find someone to vote for. American democracy really needs all of us possible to show up, and I hope you do.
Right. And that's a great message for everybody listening right now.
Yeah.
Have you always felt that way, or has it been a slow realization of the importance of the, quote, civic duty?
Well, I was raised in Washington, D.C. My mom had her whole career in government, and it never really occurred to me the importance of voting until I got a little older, in that I used to have a great deal of contempt for the government. Not that I want to blow anything up, not at all. It's just that the many arms of law enforcement had quite a problem with me all over America, where everything from trying to plant drugs on me to wiretapping to ununiformed cops, surveilling us, to where the government could go, kiss some parts of my anatomy. And so it was only years later where law enforcement was not such a thorn in my side. Because I'm not the law-breaking type. That was the thing that was most egregious to me. Like, really? I'm not the guy who's making the trouble, so why don't you, take a hike? Anyway, the more I got interested in where we are and where we need to go, that's when all of this became more relevant to me. And that's like, I don't know, like 15, 20 years ago. How much or how relevant for you and your peers is this upcoming election? Do you all talk about it? Do you care? Are your friends going to vote? Are you going to vote? I don't care who you vote for or who your friends are pulling for. That doesn't interest me as much as is the election cycle. Is this relevant to you and your friends?
I think absolutely. And a little bit about what you were talking before about how here in Boston there's almost not necessarily a higher average IQ, but definitely a little bit more plugged in.
Oh, yeah. No, it's quite obvious. Just walking the streets, you can see it.
And I think among certain circles, definitely where I'm sitting from, I feel like it's really relevant. Me and my friends do talk about it a lot. And I do actually, maybe it's not necessarily a perception of being in Boston. I've grown up here, Boston, liberal my whole life. But I do have a lot of friends that are on the other side, and we still can have a discourse as well as hang out together on Friday night.
In the many years I've been intersecting with college students, me never really being one, I've encountered a lot of apathy. And I'm not trying to insult you or any of your friends. But one thing I've noticed, where 10 years ago, you'd get out of high school, now you're on your own, you're young and good looking, she's young and good looking, like be young and good looking together with all the beer and weed and time a young person should be, completely wrecking the place. And that's fine to a certain extent, but you got to get your learn on eventually. Here's what I've noticed in the last several years. Is either I'm meeting more switched on college students, or a lot of the college students are realizing there's not a whole lot of time to do that, because the world they're going to go into is like you leave the university and your next day is like you're on the starting lineup in an NBA league and it is elbows to the head and turbulence under the net.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you this, the last question. Is this what you all are seeing as young people getting a degree and having to, here are the parents, they busted their butts to get you a chance to get that degree. So there's some expectations, not only from them, but for yourself,
right,
to go out and make this degree be more than someone with a smock on at a Starbucks. They call it a barista, but it's someone who just sells coffee, and it's not what you do with a degree. And so have you all felt this quickening of pace and a bit more urgency, seeing what the outside world is basically going to hit you with once you walk out there?
Urgency is the right word. There's definitely maybe not a crushing feeling, but definitely a little bit of, claustrophobia coming up. Being a senior, I have just a few months left and then have to go try and be a person somewhere.
Yep.
And so there's definitely that sense of urgency. And I don't know if it's a groundswell change from past generations or anything like that, but I definitely feel it among myself and my friends and my peers, and just it seems like everybody knows, and maybe it's just a factor of being told since high school that you need to know what you're doing after college, or even earlier if you're going to get a master's or if you're going right into the workforce after that.
Because when I was younger, when I was your age, America was less defined. It was less austere. The elbows were more padded. Now it's just hard fists and a lot of very smart, very ambitious people trying to fish a very narrow stream. Well, Bentley, of course, I wish you and your peers the best of luck when you leave the halls of academia.
We appreciate that.
And go hit it with we adults. And we do get up early and play for keeps, so eat your Wheaties.
So a couple more months of sleeping in, I guess.
There you go. All right, then.
Thanks for coming in, Henry Rollins, on 88.9 WERS.